Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Clinical Trials Project Management Series 2, provided by the Case Western Reserve Clinical Translational Science Collaborative. This series will be presented across 4 modules. Our final module is Monitoring and Data Management Plans 101 and Tools of the Trade. Our objectives for this module are to define and describe the purpose of the monitoring plan and data management plan, identify key elements of effective monitoring and data management plans, and to share online tools and resources discussed throughout this series. What is the purpose of a monitoring plan, and what's its role in the clinical trial? Mr. Shakespeare is going to make one final appearance in this module. What's in a name? I want to take a moment to clarify the differences between the monitoring plan we'll be discussing in this module and a data safety monitoring plan. They're both important aspects of conducting the clinical trial, but they each serve a very different purpose. However, because they both have a role in reviewing subject data and use monitoring as a common term, they're often confused for one another. It is possible that your study will need both a monitoring plan and a data safety monitoring plan. Clinical trial monitoring is the process of reviewing essential documents and data collection for compliance with the applicable regulations, policies of the institution and IRB, safety and welfare of human subjects, and to validate the integrity of the data collected. In industry trials, this role is typically filled by a clinical research associate, or CRA. We think of them as the monitor for the study. A data safety monitoring board, otherwise known as a DSMB, or an independent medical monitor, reviews safety information in the form of clinical data and adverse events to determine if the study is safe for subjects to participate in as the protocol is currently written. The DSMB or medical monitor can request revisions to the protocol at any stage of the trial to enhance the safety for study participants. The DSMB is empowered to place a hold on enrollment if they feel it is necessary to protect study subjects or stop the study from moving forward altogether. Much like the clinical trial monitoring we are going to focus on today, a data safety monitoring plan is necessary to define how the DSMB is going to meet their obligations. So when is a monitoring plan required? For IND or IDE studies, the FDA regulations require monitoring. The funding agency may also require this kind of monitoring. The purpose of the monitoring plan is to provide direction on when the study is to be monitored, what elements of the study will be monitored at each visit, and how monitoring will be accomplished. The monitoring plan needs to address all aspects of how monitoring will be conducted. Most of the time, for investigator-initiated studies, the scope of the monitoring plan is straightforward. The plan applies to a single site conducting a single protocol. However, the scope needs to be reconsidered when developing a monitoring plan for a multi-site trial or for an IND/IDE that involves more than one protocol. Ideally, the plan should be written so that it can be effectively carried out in the same manner at all participating sites. In the event of an IND or an IDE that will have more than one protocol, each study may have different needs to address. More on these considerations later. The plan should provide clear instruction on when monitoring should occur at each stage of the study. What are the conditions for monitoring visits to be scheduled for site selection, site initiation, following activation, and a closeout? In general, site selection is done after initial discussions with the site indicate a mutual interest in participation. The SIV should be done when the site has all the necessary approvals, essential documents, and supplies in order to begin enrolling subjects. Interim visits should be conducted at regular intervals during the conduct of the trial. Closeout occurs after all subjects are off study at the site. The plan should include a clear trigger for when each of these types of monitoring visits should be conducted. Will interim monitoring visits be done every 8 to 10 weeks, regardless of study activity? Or will those visits be based on milestones, such as the enrollment of every 5th patient? Discuss with the team and make a decision on what suits the study best. The plan can be amended if needed, but thinking through each aspect is vital in order to be effective. Include some flexibility for additional monitoring visits. For example, as requested by the sponsor or because of an unusually high number of queries. What will happen at each visit? Will drug or device accountability be reviewed at every visit, or would a less frequent review be sufficient considering enrollment? How about the regulatory binder? Closely related to what is how. Will visits be completed through remote means like a secure connection to the electronic medical record or using a web-based e-regulatory platform? Will some aspects of the study be monitored in this fashion while others are reviewed in person? Are there features in the study database that could be leveraged to help automate some aspects of monitoring, such as automatically generating queries for fields that have been left blank? Can we use reporting to identify entered data that seems off the wall, like an extra digit for age? How often will these kinds of tools be used, and who will be responsible for running reports and reviewing? Source data verification, or SDV, is a critical element of monitoring. Should every field in the database be source data verified? Perhaps pare down that approach to 100% SDV of eligibility, informed consent, deviations, and adverse events, and a lesser percentage of the other data points. Maybe focus on data that supports the study's endpoints. How will the monitor know what those fields are? Many sponsor investigators feel that by doing 100% monitoring, the study is best protected from major issues. Based on the FDA guidance for a risk-based approach to monitoring, the growing consensus is that is not necessarily the case. Another use for our risk assessment and management plan is to develop a monitoring plan tailored to addressing our specific concerns. In fact, if you're going to take a risk-based approach to monitoring, the FDA guidance requires a risk assessment. Makes sense, right? How can you develop a risk-based plan without exploring what risks you have? Going this route may be the ideal balance between managing the limited resources of your study monitor and their ability to effectively accomplish their mission. In addition to spelling out the timing of the various types of monitoring visits and the activities to be performed, the monitoring plan should also establish expectations around the work to be done. This helps to keep the team accountable and prioritize their work with timelines on deliverables. Once a query has been issued on a data point in the database, what is the due date for the coordinator to respond? How many hours or days do we anticipate each monitoring visit will take? After the visit's been completed, how much time does the monitor have to finalize and issue their report? And equally important, who needs to receive that report? What steps will be taken to elevate unresolved issues to leadership for additional support and awareness? When are those appropriate? If this has been addressed in the Manual of Operations, provided that the plan will not differ from monitoring, you don't necessarily need to duplicate it here. If you've made references to supporting institutional policies, include a references section to link to them. Finally, we come to the appendix. This section includes tools and templates that are required in order to carry out the plan as written. If your monitoring plan calls for source data verification on endpoint data or any other specific fields, a copy of the case report forms with those endpoints identified should be included. Templates for the monitoring report and log should be included as well so that these elements are applied consistently. Lastly, for those studies with additional complexities like multi-site or multi-protocol IND/IDEs, if there are elements of the plan that must differ for monitoring other sites or other protocols, the written plan for executing those activities should be written and included as an appendix. Make sure that the body of the plan itself directs readers to these sections. Let's move on to the data management plan. What is a data management plan and why do you need one? The purpose of a data management plan is to define how data collection for the clinical trial will be handled. How do we convert the information in the protocol into data points that can be collected and analyzed? I bet you're starting to see the common theme around our written plans. Our comic pokes fun at how lengthy written plans can be, and it wouldn't be funny without being sort of true. Accounting for these various aspects of our study does require an enormous amount of detail. Our data management plan needs to define the roles and responsibilities required to execute the plan. Who is responsible for drafting the case report forms and ultimately building them into a functional database? Who is responsible for entering data or managing queries? Who's going to run reports from the database for monitoring, data safety reviews, or statistical analysis? What database is going to be used for the study? Is it 21 CFR Part 11 compliant? Does it need to be? Remember that clinical trials conducted under an IND or IDE that will manage or store data electronically need to have a Part 11 compliance system. Most of us are familiar with academic REDCap, which is an immensely powerful tool for researchers. However, you should be aware that this version of REDCap is not Part 11 compliant and would therefore not be appropriate to use on an IND or IDE study. Discuss your needs with the appropriate contacts at your institution to identify the right database for your project. How will case report forms, or CRFs, be developed? In my experience, these are generally drafted by the data manager in collaboration with the PI. The final draft is approved by the PI, and the data manager builds the CRFs into the database. We will test the database to make sure that the CRFs are designed to collect the data accurately and that the database functions as intended. Those processes are verification and validation, respectively. How do team members who need access to the database get set up, and how will they be trained on how to use the study database? Ensuring that only appropriate members of the study team have access to the database and that their access is right for their role is an important element of securing the data. How will the investigator sign the CRFs? Remember that this is an element required by GCP. At what point will the database be locked so that no further edits to fields can be made? If we need to make changes to the database, how will those be managed and put into use? This is a process called change control. Specific changes need to be identified and go through the same kind of development, review, and approval process that we completed at startup. Instructions on how to complete the CRFs and the change control form to be used for requesting revisions to the database should be included as appendices. With this understanding of what a data management plan entails, you can see the importance of engaging your subject matter experts in writing the plan. If your study has a data manager who will be the one overseeing the design and function of the database, discuss the plan with this person. It may make sense for the data manager to be the primary author of the data management plan. Finally, where can you find tools, templates, and references that have been covered throughout this series? Included with this second installment of the Clinical Trials Project Management series is a companion guide with hyperlinks to various tools, templates, and additional resources for the topics we've covered. If you want to learn more about the project management discipline, be sure to check out the Project Leadership Certificate offered by the Case Western Reserve University Weatherhead School of Management's Executive Education. The companion guide also includes links to specific FDA guidances referenced in this series, as well as a link to FDA's guidance search. Clinical trials resources from the Health and Human Services and NIH, which include numerous guidelines and templates for manual of operations, monitoring plans, data management plans, and regulatory documents. Coverage analysis education and references. Resources for risk assessment and risk-based monitoring. Corrective and preventative action plan resources. Monitoring and auditing courses developed through a partnership of the University of Southern California and the Southern California Clinical Translational Science Institute. Let's review the key takeaways from today's module. The monitoring plan provides the who, what, where, when, and how monitoring activities for the trial will be conducted. Consider taking a risk-based approach to monitoring by focusing on areas of the trial and data that present the greatest risk to study subjects or data integrity. Similarly, the data management plan includes the structure for how data will be collected and handled for the trial, what database will be used, the process for developing case report forms, and how changes will be requested and implemented. Remember that IND or IDE studies require databases that are 21 CFR Part 11 compliant. It's been my experience that half of the success of documents like the Manual of Operations, monitoring, and data management plans is in their writing. The necessity of writing out the details of how the clinical trial will be executed has a way of naturally highlighting what we're unsure of. I can't stress enough how important it is to leverage existing processes, procedures, and collective knowledge of the study team to craft these documents effectively. Lastly, please be sure to review the companion guide with important links to references and tools that have been mentioned throughout this series. For more information about these and other CTSC or CTSA resources, education, and training programs, visit www.case.edu/medicine/CTSC. This module concludes Clinical Trials Project Management Series 2. Thank you for joining us.